Today we're traveling to Taiwan exactly 100 years ago, and we're traveling in the company of a distinguished American couple. The 1920s was something of a golden age for the Japanese colonial era. There was a lot of economic and cultural progress for the authorities to show off. Railways, this kind of stuff. Also improved health and education. The colonial authorities, showcasing their achievements to foreigners in Formosa, had a serious purpose. They wanted to make the point that Japan was a first rate power, and also that the West need not fear Japan's imperial ambitions, especially in China.
The Taiwan History Podcast, Formosa Files, is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the Frank C. Chen Foundation. Formosa Files.
So today we're traveling to Taiwan exactly 100 years ago, December 1924, and we're traveling in the company of an American couple, Harold and Alice. Okay, let me try to get this right. Focht. Yeah?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay, so it's a little bit difficult because he was an educator born in Norway, hence the difficult to say surname, Focht. So Focht rhymes with walked, but with a f. Yeah?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Forked.
Yeah. No further
Harold
comment.
and Alice. Harold and Alice.
Yeah.
Like many travelers to Taiwan at the time, their trip here was part of a bigger tour of Japan. And we know about their trip because they wrote a book of their travels called Unfathomed Japan, a travel tale in the highways and byways of Japan and Formosa. The book was published in 1928, mostly written by Harold, so I'm going to refer to it as the author says, blah, 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 rather than the couple. Apologies. The book, virtually unknown today.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it until you shared it with me.
In Japan, the Forks were the guests of the National Association for the Encouragement of Learning and also one of the big daily papers, the Kokumin Shinbun. Harold was an educator, an academic, educational advisor, and a university president. And he was there in Japan to make an educational survey of the education system and to deliver a series of educational lectures throughout the prefectures.
And his wife tagged along for companionship and to help
Hmm.
write the book, I suppose. And probably to keep him out of mischief. Although her presence did actually confuse the Japanese. A few of the Japanese thought that, she was there to make sure he didn't conduct any personal research with local geisha.
The couple were middle aged, he in his early 50s, she mid 50s, but they traveled in comfort, so not too arduous a trip. Getting to Taiwan from the US in those days involved an ocean liner trip across the Pacific, San Francisco to Yokohama, and then another boat trip, typically from Kobe to Geelong.
And these are Japanese ocean liners. Their ship, the Tenyo Maru, was, they write, a splendid ocean liner, good seamanship, the cleanest and best appointed of cabins, and the most courteous of service.
The Tenyo Maru, built in 1908 in Nagasaki by the Mitsubishi Company, it shows you how quickly Japan had industrialized after opening up.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? And in stark contrast to China, which,
Hmm.
just such a lost opportunity, right? The Japanese went, oh, these foreigners, ooh, we better get on this. And China went, no, we are great, good descendants of the dragon, and did nothing. Missed opportunity. Very sad. Anyway, so after 17 days of sailing, including a brief stop in Honolulu, they arrive in Japan.
Yes, 17 days, 6 days to Hawaii, from there, 11 to Japan. The Forks and their ship arrived in Yokohama to a sad scene. The wharf was, quote, a huge heap of twisted iron and blocks of crumpled concrete. The one time warehouses upon it had been twisted into grotesque shapes by the force of the quake and the subsequent fire.
So this is the autumn of 1924, 1 year after the Great Kanto earthquake, which hit Yokohama, Tokyo area. September 1st, 1923, over 100,000 people, maybe as high as 140,000, died, mostly from collapsed buildings, and they were all wood, so fires, and the city was just destroyed,
Yeah.
turned to ashes.
Alice and Harold spent several months exploring Japan and its educational system. Harold had great praise for the schools, modernized in such a short period of time, and there were very high rates of school attendance and of literacy.
The last part of the couple's adventure was a trip to Taiwan in early December, where they were invited by the Governor General and the Department of Education.
They voyaged by sea from Kobe to Geelong on the Shinano Maru, a smallish craft. It took them through the 200-mile-long inland sea. And he writes, the beauty of it beggars description.
So then out into the ocean and to Taiwan. So the author writes, quote, "The voyage was delightfully uneventful. My daily log might well have read, arose at 5:30, made 15 turns about deck, took bath, breakfast, played deck golf and go, weather fair and warmer, dozed in deck chair, watched flying fish catapulting from wave to wave, and crazy Chinese junks with patched sails gliding through the waves, and soon lost over the horizon edge. Tiffin delightfully served. Long siesta. More promenading the deck." Why do I want to read this with an English accent? It just, makes me, it's got this like imperial
Well, it's
edge
got
to it.
Tiffin, hasn't it? That's very
Yes.
Raj. Yeah, sounds pretty good. I could do without the 5:30 get up. But,
Yes. So this goes on for 3 days, varied only with an occasional sudden tropical shower.
okay, so the Shinano slipped into the harbor of Geelong early in the morning. The weather was unwelcoming, quote, cool, and sorry to relate, rain poured down in sheets. The rain made boarding the train somewhat difficult, but it was at last managed.
I hate to break it to you, but 100 years later, that's pretty much the same weather report you're going to get for Geelong. Not to disparage Geelong. Geelong's a great city, but the weather could
Hmm.
use a little something. So he writes, "The train dashed through a tunnel, and lo, we had passed from torrential downpour into a land of sunshine and great activity. It was a glorious panorama that unfolded before the on-speeding train. Tall, feathery bamboo, beautiful, bright flowered hibiscus, and walls fairly groaning under the gorgeous bougainvilleas brightened the glistening landscape. On every side, water buffaloes were wading belly deep in the paddy fields. To complete the picture were the Chinese farmsteads, set deep in the mire near the railway line. The ubiquitous ponds or mud holes, swarming with ducks and geese, with flocks of chickens scratching the rubbish of the front yards. An elongated sow or two, with broods of squealing pigs, wallowing in the foreground. This is pretty much what, much of rural Taiwan down here still looks like in some places.
Yes, yes. You won't see that today going between Geelong and Taipei, though.
No, no.
Mm.
But in some parts, yeah.
He paints a vibrant scene, but also a messy one. And
Mm.
the author writes, the Chinese do not understand the word cleanliness, despite the strict sanitary regulations of the Japanese conquerors. The Japanese housewife takes great pride in her beautiful, clean tatami-covered floors. In native Formosa, the people eat in the one living room and throw chicken bones and other refuse from the meal over their shoulders to the floor, where the dogs and chickens make the most of their allotted bounties. Hmm.
Hey, we've been into convenience for a long time here. That's fang bien,
Yeah.
Just toss it over
Uh,
your shoulder, let the dog get it. I'm down with
mm,
that. In Taipei, they stayed at the magnificent place that I've never heard of, actually, Taiwan Railway Hotel. Does it still exist?
no.
He writes, one of the finest hostelries in the empire. They were, quote, soon installed in several large palatial rooms with veranda overlooking the garden. The great city stretched below us and towering blue mountains in the hazy distance. Yeah, without the pollution and other stuff, it must have been quite a beautiful sight.
Absolutely, yes. Uh, the American couple were taken to various government institutions and departments. They were impressed by the streets, wide and straight and clean, and substantial modern buildings.
And Taipei is interesting, but now, as then, if you want to understand Taiwan, as you will see me screaming on various YouTube videos, you need to get out of the capital. And happily, our couple, Harold and Alice, headed south.
In Tainan, they were greeted by various officials, including the mayor of Tainan and the prefect of the local police. And they were given a tour by car of the various historical sites of the old capital. Then there were visits to schools and to Anping to see the old ruins of the castle. And also, they went to a modern salt farm.
From Tainan, they took a train down to the port city of Takao, Kaohsiung, and switched to another train, a connecting train, to Heidao, modern day Pingdong City, the great sugar producing town of the island. The ride took them through enormous sugar plantations, and he says, we incidentally passed over the longest bridge in the empire.
The river there is the Gawking River, and there's a modern bridge. But remind me, what is the old bridge called?
Okay, I will, but just one more reminder. I forget what year it was, but the bridge collapsed.
Mm.
Remember that?
Oh,
Yeah, so we
oh,
have
yeah.
a modern new one, and then there's this one that you're talking about. It has a simple name, the Old Gaoping River Iron Bridge. And at that time, it was the longest iron bridge in Asia, 1.5 kilometers long. The bridge was designed by engineer Toyoji Ida, and he unfortunately died at the age of 40 from malaria the same year it was completed, 1913. And it's not been used for nearly 40 years, but you can still go there. You can visit it. I've been there many, many times. There's the Pingdong side and then the
Hmm.
Kaohsiung side, and both have their charms. And there's a little memorial or sort of thing, and people take photos there. You can fly kites. It's just a pleasant little place to visit.
Okay, I'll stop off next time I'm in the area. And from Hato, modern day Pingdong City, they had a 2 hour ride by pushcart to Bantan. I guess that's modern day Wanlun.
Wanlun, yeah, makes sense.
Famous for,
猪脚.
yeah, pigs trotters. Of
But
course,
but
it's got to be food, not the beautiful Catholic church there.
and
Mm.
only famous because Zhang Jingguo had the dish there, and
Ah,
then,
okay. I didn't know
like,
that.
not
Huh.
even organically famous for it, like,
Ah,
at least that's as I understand it.
okay. So they're on this push cart line. It's somewhat wider gauge and with heavier rails than some of those other push cart lines.
Because it was used by small trains to deliver sugarcane. The author says, quote, coolies on this line made use of a new device. Instead of pushing the cart, they used long poles. They would stand on the cart and push it along with their poles, wielding them with amazing dexterity.
Like gondolas in Venice.
This is pretty cool, actually. I think this could be a tourist attraction. This might
Yeah,
be,
they'd only have
yeah,
to do like 50 meters off it. They'd get some good photo
yeah,
opportunities. Yeah.
yeah. Let's
But
bring this back.
yeah, Eric, I'm afraid they just had a brief drive around Kaohsiung when they came back. They didn't even stay one night.
I'm outraged, utterly outraged. Okay, so after this rebuffing of my homeland, they went back to Tainan.
Yes, and there's a passage describing a stroll around the local streets, the local area of Tainan, in places away from the Japanese buildings. And they went from place to place shopping, he says, and they were followed around by curious, staring throngs who displayed little of the courtesy that they found in Japan. His wife's hat and large Western feet seemed to be the special magnets that drew men and women alike.
Okay, so the hat, I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but the big feet, his wife had especially huge feet. No, it's a reference to foot binding, yeah?
Foot binding. The author goes on to say that most of the women who hobbled the streets of Tainan that night had bound feet.
Yeah.
But he says, quote, some 12 years ago, the Japanese government put a stop to this inhuman practice.
Horrific. So the
Horrific.
ROC, right, the Republic of China, had outlawed foot binding in 1912 when they came to power, but it took time to implement. Listeners may remember the episode we did on Gladys Aylward, the missionary in China, and the 1958 movie, The Inn of the Sixth Happiness. She was a part time foot binding inspector in the 1930s. And in the 1930s, it was still not completely stamped out, and I guess pun intended.
Huh. Yeah, right. And, it was this foot binding part of the story which caused the filming of the movie, originally going to happen here in Taiwan, to be moved from Taiwan to Wales.
Yeah, the government didn't want to be embarrassed by
Yeah.
the ROC in the 1930s in
Yeah.
China.
Hmm.
Anyway, when the Japanese came to Taiwan, they discouraged foot binding in the beginning and then gradually outlawed it between the years 1912 and 1915.
Speaking of unhealthy customs, the authors mention betel nut chewing.
Yes, they say. The outstanding filthy habit met everywhere in the island is betel nut chewing. Everywhere one encounters toothless old hags and old men chewing and spitting the nasty yellow stuff that blackens their teeth and makes them even more repulsive than the yellow teeth of Occidental tobacco chewers.
It's a custom that has persisted, hasn't it? Quite a long time. But thankfully, there's been a steep decline in betel nut chewing over the last, what would you say, 20 years?
Yeah. So from the city of Tainan, the couple heads to Kagi, Jai City, where they make a careful study of the local agricultural school.
Yeah, a few years later, that school would gain fame for its famous baseball team, the Kano baseball team. That's a story that was made into a big movie.
Yep. Okay, here's a really weird passage about the school. Quote, Kagi Agricultural School is unique in boasting ownership of exactly one half of all the horses in Formosa. That is to say, 2 horses. Yes, Formosa has just 4 horses. That
Oh,
is, unless one of them has died since we left.
okay. Time out. I want to fact check that one. I don't have any statistics at hand, but definitely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, come on. There's mounted units in the army, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
see it in the paintings of them coming in 1895, with the horses and stuff.
Mm.
Officers would have horses. It's a practical means of getting around.
Useful for prestige.
So Alice and Harold take a night express north, arriving in Taoyuan a little after 6 in the morning. And I wish, John, they would bring that back, either as a ship, a boat, or an overnight train, a slow one, like you get on at night and
Mm.
sleep and you get in at 6 in the morning. Anyway, never going to happen. But they were heading into the mountains of northern Taiwan to see some indigenous people, what they would have called aborigines. So they take a bus and they write, so we rattled along over some quite impossible roads in the old Ford bus, past pushcarts of every description, most of them freight laden, a few actually under full sail, taking advantage of the morning breeze.
Okay, so there's a road and there seems to be a push car railway parallel to it. And some of the push cars, these little carts, push carts, which are pushed usually by 2 coolies, they're using sails. Amazing. I've not heard that. I've not seen pictures of that.
No, we've seen them pulled by horses,
Mhm.
all kinds of different things, but sails, that's brilliant. That's another thing we should bring back. Very eco-friendly, very Instagrammable.
Would be
Yeah.
interesting to, try to bring that back.
So this journey goes through a beautiful landscape devoted to tea, gardening. Here and there, there's a field of jasmine flowers, so, wonderfully fragrant. Our tourists and their 2 translator guides transfer over to push carts, and up into the hills they head. Then they transfer to lighter push carts for the mountain section, two coolies pushing, and they note, "What superb physiques these men have. Well-muscled athletes in bronze."
It's pretty impressive pushing
Yes,
a heavy cart and people uphill.
it is.
So those upward sections were laborious. The downward sections exhilarating.
So the track is a single track, without switches to allow trains coming from the opposite direction to pass. And the author says the rule of the road is that the heavier laden pushcart shall remain on the track. However, when folks of quality, what a strange term, when folks of quality are passing by, it is a quite different matter, and the freight cars are lifted from the track. So basically, when big shots come by,
Yeah. Yes.
they move out of the way for the people of quality. I want to bring that
Mm.
term back. I like that. Folks of quality.
Okay.
Mm.
And many of the freight push carts would be loaded with huge cans, cans containing crude camphor oils, and then other cans or bags full of crude camphor gum.
Yeah. You're always pointing out how important camphor was
Yeah.
back in the day.
Even though it's not something you can drink.
Yes. Yeah. But it does keep mosquitoes away while you're drinking.
Okay.
Yeah. So at one point, they passed through, quote, "a quaint, indescribably filthy Formosan village, which boasted an ill smelling open air meat market. A water buffalo had been dispatched and was now on sale. All parts of the animal were hanging or lying about in wild confusion, entrails and all." Which sounds like, many of the markets you can pass through today.
Oh, come
Maybe not
on.
a
When's the
water
last
buffalo.
time you saw a water buffalo being
Yeah, okay,
butchered?
not a water buffalo, fair enough. But a pig.
Okay. Yes.
Hmm.
After 5 hours of pushing and occasionally coasting, the little train, the pushcart, reached Kappanzan, a police post at the very heart of the mountains at the outskirts of civilization, with aboriginal settlements in the great mountain valley just beyond.
Okay, from Taoyuan into the hills, Kappanzan. Kappanzan. I'm trying to think of what the Chinese characters would be, but it's not coming to me. What's it called today?
Jiaobanshan.
Jiaobanshan. Okay, there's a narrow pushcart railway built in 1910 when the area was a site of military action against the indigenous Atayal or Taya, right?
Hmm.
But soon the place was pacified, as they like to say, and the rail line became an important transport link for the camphor industry.
A few years later, the place was safe enough to host the Meiji Emperor. A residence was built for him, but he didn't come to Taiwan. Hmm.
He did not know, but his grandson, Prince Hirohito, later Emperor Hirohito, did visit, and we talked about that a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yes.
visited in 1923.
Yes. Don't mention the father, the crazy father.
Right. Yeah. What an
Yeah.
interesting story.
But anyway, so by the 1920s, Kappanzan, Jiaobanshan, was a regular stop on people's visits to Taiwan, whether members of the royal family, Japanese tourists, or foreign visitors.
One visit is from the Englishman Owen Rudder. He wrote that book, Through Formosa. He stopped by during his brief 1921 visit to Taiwan.
Right. Owen Rutter went there to see the fruits of assimilation, the Japanese project to civilize the natives. And he was, despite the fact this was something of a model village, he was critical of it. But this was a place where you could see the children of former headhunters in a school learning Japanese.
Pictures of this school and the Aborigines there were quite widely circulated. I'll post some on our website.
Jiaobanshan is in a beautiful location. It's several hundred meters above sea level and looking down to a river and across to higher mountains. It's a nice drive up there, too. If you're coming from Taoyuan, you pass by the Zihu Mausoleum.
Ah, yes. Another emperor rests there, the resting place of President for Life, Chiang Kai shek.
Yes, awaiting return to the mainland.
And then nearby, there's that park full of CKS statues.
Yes, it's brilliant. I love it. Hundreds of relocated statues from all over Taiwan, mostly of CKS, Chiang Kai-shek, but quite a few of Sun Yat-sen as well.
That place is wild. People should check that out if they want just a surreal walk through Chiang
No, no,
Kai-shek
it's a good way
everything.
of handling history. It's not
Mhm.
completely erasing it, but it by putting it together, it just sort of makes fun of it, makes light of it. It's a model, I think, of how to handle authoritarian artwork. And just about 18 minutes to the east, you come to Jiaobanshan, this Kappanzan place. There's a really nice park there, lovely trees, especially the plum trees when they're in bloom in winter.
So Jiaobanshan was one of former President Chiang Kai-shek's favorite places to stay in Taiwan, and he had a home there. He had a home kind of everywhere, didn't he? He had one down
Well,
here,
he
and
had good taste in places, I must say. They're all
yes,
very nice
yes,
spots, aren't they?
yeah. But this one in Jiaobanshan, it was a wooden house originally. I recall built for former Crown Prince Hirohito, burned down in 1992, electrical fire or something.
Yeah. However, they built an exhibition hall a few years ago, which has some nice photos, propaganda, but nice photos. And nearby, there's a really fun tunnel and shelter. Perhaps you could call it an escape tunnel. It was built in 1963. It's about 100 meters long and it's now adorned with paintings. You can visit it.
They did that for most of the homes that the one in Kaohsiung as well has a
Also, has a
bunker,
tunnel.
yeah, connected to,
Oh,
yeah.
bunker. Yeah.
So a tunnel and a command center, I think, comes with the territory wherever
Okay.
Zhang stayed, in case the communist attacked and bombed his holiday house. It never happened.
No, never. Anyway, our touring couple, the Forks, really loved their trip here. The exciting pushcart journey, beautiful scenery, their encounters with the Atayao. They had a short trip to a village. It took them across a scary bridge, but it was worth it.
Yes, they write, the Ainus of Hokkaido have been very disappointing to us, but the
Oh.
headhunters were different. They met all expectations. They were picturesque in their garb and in their manner of living.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than, traveling to Aborigines who sort of don't meet your expectations. Come on, guys, dress up a bit.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, the Aborigines looked the part, right? Because these former headhunters, both the men and women were tattooed, on their faces, quite wild looking. Yeah.
Yeah, suitably wild, but also being modernized, right, by the Japanese. And the prize exhibit being the school. So they write, the Japanese government maintains schools for the children of the mountain savages at all the police headquarters. At Kappanzan, there is a school for 35 of these youngsters.
Yeah, and they say the young savages were dressed in Japanese kimonos and looked very much like real Japanese children. They say school children ranged in age from 7 to 18, and they lived in a simple dormitory rather than return home at night.
So the Fox go next to Taipei, and in the closing days of their time in Taiwan, pretty busy sightseeing, museums, botanical gardens, and visiting schools where there was some lecturing to do. He was an educator.
One evening, they were dinner guests of the governor. They and the other guests, some of them government high officials, they were treated to a wonderful meal, Chinese food rather than Japanese.
Okay. They write, the first course was the delicious swallow's nest soup. This delectable soup is sweet and clear
Oh, mm,
and contains a gelatinous substance. I'm not a fan.
no, no.
Then shark fins. Again,
Mm.
not a fan. Broiled lobster. Thereafter, a stew made of pork and lobster and a mushroom paste.
Pork, lobster, and mushroom paste, an odd combination.
Yeah, but it's going to get a lot odder. Rather startled me. I removed the lid from the casserole. Each dish contained a whole squab, boned, stuffed, and steamed, fit for a king's board.
A squab. You're the vegetarian, so I better explain that. And yes, I did need to check the dictionary. A squab is a baby pigeon. A baby pigeon. Oh, that doesn't sound very appetizing.
A baby pigeon. Interesting. Okay, well, then comes a dish of crabs, then some fish, more crabs. Dessert was papaya, which I approve of greatly.
Hmm.
And he writes, to me, the most delicious of all Oriental fruits. Wine was served with each course. At a Japanese dinner, this partakes more of ceremony than of imbibing freely. There certainly is no excess.
Huh, very civilized. I think I'd rather be up with the headhunters.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so after all of this excitement, our couple head back to the United States by way of Kobe, then Tokyo, Yokohama, and they do some Christmas shopping. He says the streets of Kobe and Tokyo are gay with Christmas decorations. Santa Claus and the beautiful custom of gift giving are very popular here, which is, another nod to the westernization of Japan in
Hmm,
just, such a short period.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, time to say goodbye to Japan. In the author's words, so this is sayonara. Farewell to Japan. Farewell to a great people, a great nation.
And a great colonizer. They write, the changes that have come about in the island within the 33 years of Japanese possession speak well for Japan's greatness as a colonizing people.
So our couple would be champions for Japan in the following years. I don't know specifically how this took shape, but it was part of a wider war for influence and support, especially how it related to China.
Yeah, propaganda war between the Chinese nationalists and the Japanese.
An interesting footnote here is related to that war for good coverage, and it occurred in 1929 in San Francisco. It involved the ocean liner the couple had sailed across the Pacific on, the Tenyo Maru. After it pulled into San Francisco, one passenger, wife of the Chinese vice consul, she demanded that her baggage be passed through customs and delivered at once. No checking it.
Yeah, well, okay. Vice consul, that means technically, right, diplomatic immunity from customs inspections. You are allowed to not check their bag,
The
right?
custom agents had a chat about it. They said, nope, sorry, not for a vice consul. They broke
Okay.
open the suspicious trunks and they found 2,300 cans of opium. That's about 1,000 pounds in weight. A huge amount.
Yeah, can you imagine her saying, "It's for personal use. It's
Yeah,
just
personal use.
I get headaches." Yeah, not a good look for the nationalists, the new nationalist government.
Yeah,
Mm.
they've just been in power for a year at this stage. Yeah. So, Eric, any last thoughts on our episode today?
Not really, but to add to your footnote, I
Okay.
see that Harold had his birthday during his Taiwan trip. He turned 54 years of age as the overnight train rumbled from Taihoku, that would be Taipei, to Tainan. And what grabs me is the date, December 7th.
Oh, December 7th. That's quite a birthday date for someone writing a glowing account of Japan. Huh.
Exactly. As many will remember the famous Roosevelt speech, December 7th, a date that will live in infamy. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. 17 years after this journey by this couple, Japan and the US would be at war.
I don't blame the couple for their glowing account. I can see that it was quite impressive, Taiwan in those days, and difficult to foresee the Second World War.
However, the Herald guy did get to see, both of them actually did get to see the war and the end of the war because they died in 1954 and 1952. So they at
Yes,
least got to see that whole arc of history.
yes, yes.
All right. As John noted, we've got a bunch of photos that we're going to put up on the website. Different stuff from the Japanese era. Always cool to check that out. And thank you all for the likes and subscriptions and stuff. Our social media numbers have gone up significantly, and thank you for that. All right. Shishia. And we'll see you soon. I'm Eryk Michael Smith.
I'm John Ross. Bye.